While we're out here in San Francisco, we need to get a read on one of the hottest trends out there, cybersecurity. With every news story about a major hack or a data breach, people who are running companies increasingly recognize the need to protect their data. Which brings me to Palo Alto Networks, PNW. That's the best and fastest growing cybersecurity play out there. Pioneered the next generation firewall with a stock that has given you right around about a 70% return since we last spoke to the CEO in September. Not to mention 25% gain year to date. Now, Palo Alto reported phenomenal results at the beginning of March. Their third straight quarter with both revenue growth and billings growth in excess of 50%. Not to mention the earnings per share up 90%. The one knock on the stock is it's very expensive. But everyone who's made that argument, including me at one point last October, has only ended up being dead wrong. Can Palo Alto keep climbing? Let's check in with Mark McLaughlin. He's the chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks. Learn more about his company's prospects. Mr. McLaughlin, welcome back to Mad Money.
Thanks, Jim, for having me. Congratulations on the new studio.
Thank you so much. And it's great to be able to be one-on-one with you right here.
Fantastic.
I recently pulled up with some people in the military. I asked them what the biggest threat is. And I thought it would be ISIS. Maybe I thought it would be some sort of incursion from Latin America, where we know that there's countries that are breaking down. Cybersecurity. Cyber war, basically. It's a war, right?
That's correct, yep.
And what are we doing about it?
Well, I think the reason you're hearing that is it's becoming more and more evident to folks that we live in the digital age, right? Everything we do is digital, and the threat is to the digital age. So if we can't get this right, meaning we can't get this risk compartmentalized into something acceptable, it's possible the way of life may have to change from everything from
way of life.
Privacy, banking. If you think about your bank account, it doesn't exist except in bits and bytes, right? You trust that it's there.
Yes.
Imagine if it were right now and 10 minutes later it weren't magically, everything was gone. What would that do to the financial system? And you can extend that to the energy sector, utilities, SCADA that keeps the airplanes flying. All those things are digital in nature. So what the realization is that the very fabric of society is at risk here if we can't get this right. And that's why people are so focused on it.
The bad guys are smart. How about if the bad guys took the top kids from Harvard, Stanford, Harvard, Mudd, Caltech? They recruited them, top guys. How can we stop them?
Well, they already have really smart people, right? The good news is so do the good guys, and there's some really fantastic people working not only in industry but in government as well. So it's just which hat do you want to wear, right? I think what's really changing or has to change is the recognition that prevention needs to be the key word here. I mean, we're living in an age right now where everybody's very worried about this, as they should be, but the assumption is they're going to get in, there's nothing you can do about it. Right. At Palo Alto and other folks, but we reject that premise and say that what we have to do is have a prevention-oriented approach, because if you don't have that approach and you build things that can do that, people, process, and technology, then the cost curve that's really to the benefit of the bad guys is going to keep growing, and to the detriment of the good guys, right? So that's what has to change, and part of that's talent.
Okay, well, look, everybody on Wall Street says, okay, here's some interchangeable parts. FireEye, it's Fortinet, and there's CyberWar, and there's Palo Alto Networks. Right or wrong?
I think that's wrong. I think that they're each doing something that can be important, right? So let me start with no company can do everything, right? Not Palo Alto Networks either, right? So this is an ecosystem approach where you have to have an architecture that is prevention oriented. Part is technology, part is people, part is process, as I said. In the technology realm, to drive prevention approaches, we believe that we have the best approach to that because we have a platform, a real native platform that's able to do prevention.
Not bolt-on.
No, we built everything ground up, right? And which is critically important. That's a great observation. It's critically important because everything has to be integrated to get automated outcomes. That's how you change the cost curve, right? Only Palo Alto has done that. Other companies have parts of that. Other companies have tried to bolt things together. That just doesn't really work in the security space, and that's why we're selling so well. Okay,
you got me thinking about this bank thing. I check my bank balance every Monday. Am I not doing it enough?
I tend to check it more frequently than that and my credit card statements, only because if you're going to see some malicious behavior in there, you're not really sure when it's going to show up. Generally, you're protected against that stuff, meaning that if you find something that's bad, the bank's going to cover you on that, or the credit card company's going to cover you at the end of the day. The sooner you know it, if there is an issue, obviously the better it is, because the people who may have stolen from you have less time to utilize it.
Well, the reason I say that is because I look at your revenues, and I look at the revenues in the banking industry, and I think now there's a mismatch here. Someone's not spending enough because otherwise your revenues would be 10 times greater if every bank was spending. And that's just the banking industry. I mean, is that a wrong way to look at it, your revenues versus what all the revenues are in critical issues?
Well, we're a fairly large company at this point, and you can see from our revenue growth, north of $1 billion, projected revenue run rate, still growing at over 50%, like that was the last quarter's numbers.
But if companies are only spending that much on security, we're in trouble.
Well, I'm not so sure it's about how much you spend, it's how you spend it. Obviously, there's a big spend here. It needs to occur, right? And the reason it needs to occur is there needs to be a forklift change out of legacy technology, which clearly doesn't work. If it did, we wouldn't read about all these breaches, right? Into next generation technology, this architecture I described. I think it's a mistake for people to rush headlong into that and just say, let me spend twice as much as I used to, particularly if I'm going to spend it on the legacy stuff. What they need to do is get the right architecture and then spend accordingly.
Okay, information sharing, change game?
Yep.
What do we do?
It's super important. So if you go to this prevention approach that I mentioned and changing the cost curve of what's happening around us in this cyber battle, the nirvana would be that if an attack is going to succeed, it succeeds one time. Period, right? That's not the way it is today. Today it can succeed 100,000 times, and then you change it slightly and get a variant, change it another 100,000 times. That's what we're trying to do, is to change that calculus. So if it works, it only works once. One of the big ways to get to that point is if everybody could get on an almost real-time basis to share the threat data that they're seeing on a global scale, right? Then that greatly increases the chance that if it works, it only worked one time because everything else was programmed automatically to handle it.
One last question. I know initially this was kind of an afterthought. I felt that the watershed was Target. CEO actually lost his job. The discussion now is what, with the audit committee, right in the board? I mean, is it actually in the board about what to do?
I talk to a lot of boards and I read a lot of data. There's a very large percentage of publicly traded companies today are standing up standing committees, like the audit committee, NomGov, and Comp. Right now there's a new one called Safety and Security, and it's a new committee. And if not, the audit committee is picking up a specific charter around this. It just goes to show that companies are realizing if they don't get this right, very reputation, perhaps the entire business is at risk.
Well, there we go. This is the greatest secular trend, unfortunately, in business right now, and the leader of it is Mark McLaughlin. He's the chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks. Mark, congratulations on a series of unbelievable quarters.
Thanks.
Booyah! Jim Cramer here from Mad Money. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube. Click here to subscribe and get the jump on my exclusives with CEOs, plus market news, investing advice, and a whole lot more.